So my name's Tom. I've been working here for about 30 years. When I joined the company, I had no idea what watercress was. I did want to become a farmer, but I didn't want to become an arable farmer or a beef farmer. I wanted to be a horticulturalist. So from the age of, say, 12, 13, I was growing potatoes. Couldn't spell potato, but could grow a potato. I, and like all of the guys that are here that work on the farm, have all learned how to grow watercress for ourselves pretty much. George had the fortune of working up here with Sean and Penny. So these farms have been hijacked. Sean and Penny have got their day off. They're in their 60s. I'm in my 50s. So Sean and Penny are like big brother and sister. When I joined the company, they'd already done about 20 years apiece. So they've got bags of experience. They're the ones that provide all the training for the guys here that are in their 20s. And we're talking about an industry that goes back 7, maybe 8 generations in this area. So the farms were first found in around about the 1880s, but we think that we were producing watercress before that period here because watercress was scattered all over the UK. There was probably about 1,000 acres at one stage. Now there's about 100 left. But wherever there are springs, you will find watercress farms. And that's what makes this farm and all of the other farms in this area so unique, is that we're sitting on top of one of the largest bodies of water in the UK. And that stretches from Dorset all the way up to Spalding, which is East Anglia. We've got a sandwich of water and it's confined. So this is a confined aquifer below us. So the water will come down as rain. It works its way through the ground. And every year there's another layer. So some years it'll be a metre, some a little less, some a bit more. They all stack up on top of each other for about 45 years. And it's like a Brita filter. So it's pushing the water down. It's going under huge pressure. It goes through bedrock and cleans and filters and picks up all the minerals. And eventually then gets pushed into what's called the confined aquifer. There are breakages in this sort of highly pressurized body of water, and this is one of the breakages. So it hasn't seen daylight in 65 years, but it's absolutely amazing. It tastes great, it's very clean, and it's alkaline, but it's full of minerals, so it's very good for you. So that water that's been working its way down has to come up at some point, and the location that we're at is the location of where it comes up here, and you're probably looking at around about 4 million litres a day will flow out of that one borehole there, but there are lots of springs. So there's one here, there's another one over there, another one there, and they're basically just tiny little springs that feed the beds. We don't really want them there. We want the water coming in at like an organised point. And then what we do is we run the water down these carriers. So these beautiful little canals are all scattered around the farm. And what we'll do is we'll channel the water into the beds by using these carriers. The actual format of growing has not changed. So this farm has only grown watercress its entire life, nothing else. So we're a mono production, and that mono production isn't normal. So if you've got an allotment at home, you're rotating. We don't need to rotate because our soil is our water. So we replace soil with water. So this is aquaponics, it's hydroponic, whatever you want to call it. But the fact is the water comes in at the top and it works its way down. Now, the watercress is anchored into the bed. So you've got roots, and there's 2 different types of roots, really. You've got one which is the anchoring bit that holds the watercress in the bed, and then you've got the other bit that's floating in there. And what they're doing is they're sucking up all of the nutrients. So we're taking up nitrogen, phosphates, potash, and lots of other minerals out of the water. Effectively, it comes out of the spring, and by the time it gets down to the bottom, it's about an hour and a half. So we're trying to kind of hold the water in the beds as long as possible, and that's what the sandbags are for. So that's to slow the water down, but as it flows through, we're picking up all those nutrients. This particular farm was planted in February, and we've just started cleaning out and replanting. So up the top there, you can see that sort of beige gravel. That's how the beds look actually at planting. And if you went in there, you could probably find the seed. It's tiny seed. It's around about 4,500 seeds per gram. Very, very small seed. But what we have to do is we have to kind of trick the seed into germination, because in February, when we planted this crop, it was freezing. And if you put the seed in the beds, it just wouldn't do anything. It'd wait until the sun started to warm up the beds. The spring water is always 10 degrees. So we've got one advantage, that when it's freezing in February, the water's 10 degrees. So we race the water through the beds, and that will help warm up the beds a bit. But what they'll do, the farmers will take the seed and we put it in a jacuzzi. So we've got these like kind of conical jacuzzis, and it holds how many kilos? 2.5 kilos, and you can work that out. It's millions of seeds effectively in one of these jacuzzis. And we put a little heater in there for like an aquarium, and then we bubble oxygen through it, and we leave it in there for like 2 days. And then once we get to 2 days, it just starts to throw out a radicle, which is the first sort of root stem formation of a seed. And then we drain it, we mix it with like a kind of an organic wallpaper paste, and then we drive through the beds with this drill with like 24 nozzles, and we squirt it into the bed. And that's how it started. So you can't see anything up there in the beige beds now, but there is seed in there. It is germinated, and in about 8 weeks' time, those top beds that are gravel will look like this. We're effectively growing a crop that we're going to only harvest this top little bit here, okay? So traditionally, watercress would have been grown in the winter. So if you went back to the 1880s, all of these beds would have been cropped with a month with an R in it. But that was a very slow production process. You imagine winter, we could be waiting sort of 14, 15 weeks in the winter. So in the 1970s, they started working out how to use seed, and we started to become a summer production facility. And now what we do is we have farms in Jerez in Spain, and they do all the winter for us. So Adi, Damien, Simon all flew over to Jerez 30 years ago, and they set up the farms there, and all of that watercress that comes in does winter, and they basically pay our wages. And then in the summer, they then go to the beach and we pay all their wages. And so it's a kind of perfect relationship. We all work together. But what we're after is just this top bit. So when you buy your watercress, that's the bit you're buying, okay, without those roots. That's the only part that we can really sell. And the reason why it's kind of that length is traditionally watercress was sold in bunches, and those bunches were made to be about that size, and it was to do with really eating it. People used to eat the bunches as they walked along in the streets, so it was sold on the streets in London. But initially, the very first shipments that went on the railway were in these baskets. These are called half flats or wicker flats, and they were made and they were returned. So the watercress would be laid in there and with the roots on to try and keep it alive, because they didn't have refrigeration. But what watercress does is it kind of stands up. So we'll roll these beds down on Monday ready for Tuesday harvest. But there's something called geotropism, so it wants to stand up all the time. So watercress, even at night, will start to stand up. So they had all sorts of problems with bent cress, but also people were taking the watercress with the roots in it and they were growing it for themselves. So they were sort of stealing the production. And also they really wanted to keep all of the roots in the bed so they could get another crop themselves, because they were trying to extend their season. So what they then started doing was making bunches, and they would pack these bunches into a veneer box. So it was before we had cardboard, before polystyrene. So they used to have wooden boxes, but very, very thin veneer, and they packed them standing upright, and those would go on the train, and they would get to London within a couple of hours. Okay, so it was a quick journey, and they would sell those in London. One of the things that they were really scared of in the 1880s was food poisoning. So watercress could have been grown in the river and sold in London and made you extremely sick. So we worry about the rivers now being dirty. They were then, and they were terrified of all of the pathogens like liver fluke or E. coli, salmonella, all the stuff we're scared of. They were really scared of because they couldn't really fix the problem. So what they then started doing is growing and selling from farms, but they would put a little stick in the bunch. So they were tied up with string, and they would put a little stick in it. And in that stick, it would say where the watercress came from. So Alresford had its own brands like Supercress, or you had Golden Springs, Silver Springs, all of these different brands. And they were the first ever food brands that were selling products in London. And people were really motivated to buy the one they wanted. And they would have microbiologists looking at the water quality on this farm and then signing it off to say it was safe. So that was an important part of the supply. And these days, what we're doing now is we harvest all of this watercress using that machine. So that machine now will harvest something like 6,000 kilos in 3 or 4 hours. And 6,000 kilos is going to be about 60,000 bags. And that's our kind of volume that we produce. But we would have to have an army of staff in order to harvest all of that and get it to market. So what we're actually doing is we're cutting this bit, and then that goes into crates, and those crates go onto a trailer, and then we then go and chill it, and then we then send it off to a company that packs it for us. So what they do is they wash it, and then they pack it into those little pillow packs. So that is the main body of our business. But The thing is that this watercress here is all good. So all of these stems that we've not harvested have all got amazing health benefits and is currently being wasted, but we're moving forward. So I've done some posts recently to explain that we send some of this off, this product, but also the overwinter crop that's got maybe some blemishes, we send that off to get frozen now. So we make like a watercress confetti, and that is a frozen, chopped up or powdered watercress, which then goes into food dishes. But we're also looking to harvest this second path so we can make pesto, and we're looking to try and develop our own pesto that we can sell in frozen drops. We call them drops. They're about 6 grams. And the idea is we're going to sell those in retailers, but in bags, frozen bags. So you just tip, some of these drops out and then you can defrost them and use it. And the reason why we've got to go to frozen is that in the summer, we have so much production that we can't sell it. So right now, all of this is sold. And then from here, we go to another one of our 5 farms around here. But once we get to around about August, it is going into this regrowth stage. So forget the seed. We then go back to this thing called regrowth, which is basically like a lawn. So the crop keeps on coming back. So after it's harvested, they have to go back in with these specialist tipping machines, tidy it up, and it grows back, but it grows back in about 3 weeks. So you imagine in the summer, we've got 3 weeks, and in this time of the year, we're on 8. So we end up with twice the amount we need. And unfortunately, everyone's on holiday in August. So our sales they don't go down, but they don't grow much with the weather. So we're looking to turn all of that product into alternative products. And there's another part of watercress which we sell for skincare products. There's a company called Prof and Doc. They basically take the watercress, they macerate it, then they heat it up and split the 2 liquids. It's like the curd and the whey. And the liquid that comes off the whey, they'll effectively use that as skincare. And it's a natural urease inhibitor, so it's great for nappy rash. And they've made some products, skincare products, that they're using it for. So we're trying all sorts of innovative things, trying to look at ice lollies, pesto, watercress soup base, also frozen. So there's lots of ideas, and we're in that kind of period of the industry where we have to use everything we've got